Namaste, and welcome to your healing journey. This week we are still in the mind realm, and our mind is full of all kinds of fears and doubts and judgments. And this particular section, we're going to be focusing on embracing our fears and releasing them. I'd like to start this session sharing a story where I had a lot of fear arise for me and what happened for me when I allowed those fears to come up. You may know that I had been diagnosed with a basketball-sized tumor, and part of my healing journey lay in becoming free from that tumor. And so a year later, I had something happen where my whole house burnt down, and I was financially completely wiped out by that. And yet a year after that, my husband of 19 years, he fell in love with a younger woman, and he left me for that younger woman. And a year after that, a divorce had come through, and I'd lost my job. And pretty much I'd lost everything that I called my life. But I actually felt that I'd handled it all very well, in a very real and open and wholesome way, welcoming myself to experience whatever I was experiencing on that radical, life-changing journey. And so the most extraordinary thing happened. Here I was, I thought I'd come to peace with all that had happened to me, and it was quite a lot of disasters, one after another. And the divorce had just come through, and my spousal support check had come through. And I was vacuuming the living room, and out of nowhere, this overwhelming fear came flooding over me. And I didn't know this, but I had fear of feeling fear. And so I flew into action and started cleaning the whole house and scheduling meetings with my friends and going out to the movies, watching television, almost anything to distract myself from the fear that was arising. Some days later, the next wave of fear just came roaring up through my body. And again, I flew into action. I was on the run from feeling fear. Finally, it was a week later, and I'd had 2 more of these fear waves come through. And I was vacuuming the floor in front of the couch. And as I looked down at that piece of carpet, I thought, you know what? I vacuumed the same spot yesterday, and I haven't even sat here. There's no way that this carpet is dirty in any way. And I stopped, sat down, and I said, Brandon, you are on the run from fear. You're afraid of feeling fear. And so you've put yourself into emotion as a means of avoiding fear. And so I stopped and just sat down, and I welcomed all the fear to come flooding. And I asked, what is it that I'm so afraid of? And the spousal support check for the next month came up in my awareness, and it was a picture that it wasn't going to arrive. And I had a fear that I was not going to be sent my next spousal support check. And it was a real panic that was coming up. And I opened my eyes, and I thought to myself, you know what? This can't be what all this fear is all about. I mean, what a crazy thing. After all I've been through, nearly losing my life through a life-threatening tumor, to my house burning down, to my marriage dissolving, to losing my job, to losing everything. And I'm afraid a bloomin' check won't come through. And I began to wonder if indeed there were deeper fears and that this was just a surface fear. And so I sat down and I said, okay, let me face this worst fear. And so I asked, okay, so what if it happened? What if this spousal support check didn't come in? What's the worst that could happen? And I saw that the spousal support check wasn't coming in. And my heart began to pound, and I began to feel real fear that I wouldn't be able to pay. In a couple months' time, I would run out of money and wouldn't be able to pay my rent. And all this fear started coming up. And I said, okay, how does that make you feel? Fear. And I said, okay, if there was an even deeper thing here. So if that happened, that it didn't come in, then what's the worst that could happen? And I saw a picture of me 2 months down the line. And my landlord, though he likes me very much, would have to chuck me out of the apartment because I was renting it because I couldn't pay the rent. And whoa, the burning humiliation I felt that at the age of 41, I couldn't even pay my rent, and just burning humiliation. And I said, well, if that happened, that I got chucked out, then what's the worst that could happen? And I saw a picture of me going to my mother's house. And immediately I crossed that picture out and I thought, I'm not going to suddenly become a parasite. And at the age of 41, go live off of my mother. And so then I made a different picture of going to stay with a friend for a while. And we have this expression in America called you wear out your welcome. And I went to go stay with a friend, and I could see that over time, after a couple weeks, I will have worn out my welcome. And the burning shame that here I am at 41. And there's just, I'm so incapable of taking care of myself that I have to rely on my friends, and even my friends don't want me to be around. And the shame of that, and also the hopelessness of that. And I said, okay, if that happened, then what's the worst that could happen? And I fell into a feeling of devastation as I saw myself on the streets of New York, my home city. And I'm a beggar. And I'm sitting there on the streets of New York with a can, holding it out, asking for people and begging people to give me money so I can put food in my belly. And I just felt an absolute devastation that here I am with all the diplomas, with all my certifications, all my business experience, all of this, all my education. And the truth of the matter is that I feared that I did not have what it took to survive. And that ultimately I would end up on the streets of New York begging. And I asked, okay, if that happened, that I really don't have what it takes to survive, what's the worst that could happen? And of course the words arose, I would die. And it began to feel like everything was blanketed in blackness, as if the body and the being was somehow dying. And it was an interesting thing that as I just allowed myself to surrender into the blackness, these pinpricks of light just came suffusing the blackness. And as I opened into that light, there was light everywhere. Everything was suffused with light. And I felt one with everything, that without a form, all that existed was this field of light, of love. And as I was hanging out in this love, in this light, I thought, knowing that this is who I really am, does this give me enough leverage to want to do a full journey process and get to the root of my worst fear and clear it out? And that day, I did. And from that point on, I've never had any fear, only just an ocean of trust that somehow life will provide, and that whatever is needed to provide in life is here. So today, we're just going to explore and welcome up various fears that we might have, and just name them out loud, and just surround them with acceptance, with love. And then tomorrow I'm going to take you through the process that really gave me the leverage that I needed to finish with my worst fear. My worst fear was I didn't have what it took to survive. And so, once again, taking a deep breath in of openness and willingness. And just let your own awareness expand vastly in front, spaciously behind, and freely to all sides. Your deepest fears are actually the gateway to your soul. And so welcoming a younger you to stand by a campfire and a mentor in the present day you. And all you're going to do is give a balloon of openness and expression to the younger you. And let the younger you breathe that consciousness in now. And now open your being and your heart and out loud, emptying out loud into your room some of the fears that you've had. They may be little, they may have been big like mine was, but just any fears that might have been hanging around with you in your life. So 1, 2, 3, just gently. Just start speaking out loud some of the fears that you've had in your life. Just emptying them out. Some of your fears about your own performance, about your abilities, your fears about your own survival capabilities, fears about your lovability. Just, again, I'm speaking under the younger you so that you can just empty out any fears that are coming up, those niggling little fears that it seems so insignificant. Just get them up and get them out, continuing emptying out. Really scrape the bottom of the barrel on this. Just keep emptying out. And now what I'm going to ask is that the mentor is going to take all these fears out of you and is going to put them into a bubble of love, an embrace of acceptance, and then offer them up to the light for now, knowing that tomorrow you're actually going to go through a full process where you get to the root fear, and even deeper than that, you're going to open into the light of your own being. And so, taking all the fears, putting them in a bubble, offering them up into the light, and then saying to the younger you, you're allowed to feel fear. Your fears are the gateway to your soul. And then hugging the younger you, letting the younger you merge inside, growing up now, with this welcoming and this love and acceptance of the fears that we all feel in the natural human condition, and allowing your own awareness to be vast, spacious, free and endless in front of you, boundless behind, and spacious to all sides, infinite below and sky-like above, and just resting in this ocean of acceptance. You can open your eyes now. And today's assignment is very simple. Anytime a fear comes up for you, just write it down so that we have these fears to work with tomorrow when we continue in this journey in releasing our fears. And so I look forward to tomorrow's session, and until then, a heartfelt namaste.